Here it is, it's GGB and I crushed it, guys. I just absolutely walloped it. We had two technical upsets yesterday that fit within my definition of an upset. But I got the biggest one, so that means I sit at 2 points heading in to Thursday, which is pretty important because if I get the upset on Thursday right, I'll be either sitting at 3 points or 3.5 points, depending on how I did. I'm actually really hyped. I'm really excited for these games coming up. We'll talk about the Big Ten real quickly. So if you did not know, Illinois ended up winning against Wisconsin at home, which means Illinois now sits in first place all by itself, and Purdue and Wisconsin are now in a tie for fourth. So kind of a hugely important game that went Illinois' way. And now Illinois controls their own destiny down the stretch. Obviously, Michigan State is going to be in the picture, and you got to believe Wisconsin and Purdue is going to get back in it eventually. But I just think this is really interesting heading down the stretch. Who's gonna end up winning the Big Ten? The Big East, we got a pretty significant upset. Now, it wasn't a huge upset. 4-point underdogs for Marquette, but Marquette ended up winning, and now are, by my calculations, in a tie for third. Now, you can make the argument that Marquette has more wins, have one more loss. I don't know. But the percentage-wise works out to a tie, so I'll just consider it a tie for now for third place with UConn. Big win, big bounce-back win after a heartbreaker against Providence the other day. But Marquette gets a huge win, and this puts them right back in this picture, guys. It really helped out Providence, by the way. Providence is about 2 games ahead in the loss column. Next closest team is Villanova. Now, Marquette's only a game behind Villanova, by the way. So, again, Marquette is right there in that picture. I think it's going to be really interesting down the stretch. But we have 4 games going on today with ranked teams. 7 o'clock, we have number 3, UCLA, which is at 16-2, traveling to number 7, Arizona, which is at 17-2. Arizona favored by 7 points on ESPN. 7 o'clock, we have Iowa, which is at 14-7, traveling to number 16, Ohio State, which is at 13-5. Ohio State favored by 5 points on FS1. 8 o'clock, we have number 2, Gonzaga, which is at 17-2, traveling to San Diego, which is at 13-9. Gonzaga favored by 21.5 points on ESPN2. At 10 o'clock, we have number 19 USC, which is at 18-3, traveling to Arizona State, which is at 6-12. USC favored by 6 points on ESPN2. So we'll talk about the Pac-12 real quick, and then we'll move on to the Big Ten and go back to the West Coast Conference. So obviously, this game between UCLA and Arizona is huge. With a UCLA win, obviously this day in first place was in Arizona win, they also move into first place. What's interesting to note is with the losses, right? With a loss, UCLA drops into second place because obviously they'd sit at 8-2. Arizona would sit at 8-1, and USC would. See, that's the interesting thing to me. Okay, so USC also plays today. So if you're looking at it, UCLA would have an 80% win percentage. Yes, USC, even with a win, would move to 9-3, which is 3-4, which is a 75% win percentage. So even with a loss, worst case scenario for UCLA, they're in second place. Arizona with a loss falls to 7-2, and 7-2 is a little bit more interesting with a USC 1 win. Now it's still likely not going to be enough. Yeah, it isn't, but USC's only 2% behind. They have a 75% win percentage. Arizona would have a 77% win percentage, so barely better. That's what's interesting. So whoever wins this game is in first. Whoever loses it is in second, regardless of what happens between USC and Arizona State today. Now, USC with a loss falls to 8-4. 8-4 would put them at 2/3, a 66% win percentage. Now that I think about it, Oregon, on the other hand, Oregon plays Colorado tomorrow. So Oregon with a win can move to 7-3, which would be a 70% win percentage, better than USC's with a loss. Washington also plays tomorrow, Cal. So Washington and Oregon, both with a win, have a chance to pass USC tomorrow if USC is to lose. So worst case scenario for USC, you could end up dropping all the way down to 5th place in the Pac-12 today if Oregon and Washington are both to win and USC is to lose. By the way, Arizona State with a win moves to 3-6. Not a big deal. As I've said before, Arizona State, no matter what they're doing, they're not getting worse in the Big Ten. Pac-12, and they're obviously not getting better. I doubt they're going to end up ever passing Colorado. It just seems unlikely at this point. Best case scenario for Arizona State, by the way, is if Colorado loses to Oregon tomorrow and they pull off the upset against USC, they are still about 2 games behind Colorado. I just don't see you catching up to them. But at the same time, I also don't see you stooping down to Cal level. So, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see Arizona State moving anywhere here in the future, even with wins. But anyways, that's what I'm seeing. So basically, to break it down for you, USC fan probably would like Arizona to lose this one. Would make you closer. If you're an Oregon-Washington fan, you're going to be watching the USC-Arizona State game with a lot of intention. Obviously, you're going to be watch your own game, but if USC loses, you have a great opportunity to hop up. So Oregon-Washington fans, you look at it, Washington's going to obviously be watching their own game against Cal. Oregon's going to be watching their own game against Colorado, but then at the same time, they're probably all going to be checking in to see the USC-Arizona State score. And Oregon fans will be looking at the Washington score. Washington fans are going to be looking at the Oregon score. I mean, this is a big game for all of them. But Oregon and Washington fans, the one thing they can agree on is they're both rooting against USC, both big Sun Devil fans tonight. California would love a Sun Devils loss, but I just don't see them catching up. Although, if they are to win this game, they can move to 3-9, and Arizona be at 2-7. I'd be close at least. So it's getting closer there, Cal. You're almost catching up, especially an 8-game losing streak. You can only be about a game and a half behind. It's pretty impressive. But moving on to the Big Ten, which is the other game we have to talk about. It's obviously Iowa-Ohio State, right? Ohio State with a win doesn't move anywhere, but with a loss, that sends them a tumbling, right? Because if you lose this game, if you're Ohio State wins, they move to 7-3. So I should say that off the bat. And that's about a half game behind Wisconsin and Purdue. It's obviously a big game for Ohio State because you got to stay in this race. And obviously you don't want to beat the 5 seed. 5 seed is the loser of those 5 teams because the top 4 seeds get a 2-day bye in the Big Ten tournament. The 5th seed does not. So obviously you don't want to be there if you're Ohio State. You would love to be a half game behind. Now, with a loss, which really would hurt Ohio State, they would drop below Indiana. Indiana was just at 7-4. You would fall to 6-4. Now, you're looking at Michigan also plays Purdue on Saturday. So we'll be watching that game. But Ohio State would fall to 6-4. That would still be ahead of Michigan's 5-4, at least for now. But, yeah, so if Ohio State loses this game, they fall to 6-4. Pass below Indiana. Indiana would move to the 5 spot. They're playing Iowa. Iowa sits at 4-6. Iowa on a 2-game losing streak with a win moves to 5-6. Rutgers doesn't play until Saturday, so you'll be watching that game if you're an Iowa fan. But if you win this game, you move to 5-6. That will take you out of the tie for 10th place and get out of the tie for 9th place. Out of the tie for 9th place, then you'd be in sole possession of 9th place. It would kick Penn State out of the tie. Now, on the other hand, with a loss, you fall to 4-7, which would kick you out of the tie. Penn State would move into 9th place in that scenario. So basically, to break it down for people who aren't Ohio State or Iowa fans, if you're a Wisconsin Purdue fan, you would love Ohio State to lose to give you some separation, and Indiana would love Ohio State to lose simply because it would bump them up a spot. And Michigan will also love them to lose because not only are they rivals, but Ohio State would also be about half a game ahead of Michigan. So Michigan definitely has a chance to catch up there. If you're a Rutgers or Penn State fan, would be big Ohio State fans tonight because you don't want Iowa to pass you. Iowa is a team that is rather close to catching up there. Although it wouldn't be the worst case in the world. Honestly, if I'm a Rutgers fan, I would actually want Iowa to win because Ohio State would fall to 6-4. You sit at 6-5. You're barely behind them. You could end up passing Ohio State in this scenario. So I change my mind. If you're a Rutgers fan, you're probably rooting for Iowa today. Now, Penn State, on the other hand, big Ohio State fans, would love Ohio State to win this basketball game. It seems basketball game. I know it sounds weird coming from a Penn State fan's mouth, but you want Iowa to lose this basketball game. Same thing for Maryland. Maryland would like a Iowa loss, be only about a half game. Maryland and Northwestern both be about a half game behind. So it's what you want. If you're a Penn State, Maryland, or Northwestern fan, to break it down for you, big Ohio State fans tonight. If you're a Purdue, Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, or Rutgers fan. Big Iowa fans tonight. Now, on to the last conference. That's going to be the West Coast Conference, and obviously that's the one that Gonzaga is dominating with a Gonzaga loss, which is weird. Don't expect it, but with a Gonzaga loss, they fall to 6-1. Still not going to be good enough. Actually, St. Mary's does play tomorrow. So in the unlikely case of events where Gonzaga does lose, St. Mary's can tie them by beating Portland tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So at least interesting thing there. If you're St. Mary's, you'll probably tune into the Gonzaga San Diego game just to see if you could possibly work out in your favor. Yeah, San Diego with a win moves to 7-3. Not going to pass 6-1, but it's not bad. It's a really good record. If you lose this game for San Diego, which is the likely scenario, right? You fall to 6-4. That's going to be a 60% win percentage. BYU sits right behind you at 5-3, and that'll be interesting. They actually play San Francisco tomorrow, so they would have a 66% win percentage. You would have they would have a 60% win percentage. So you're looking at it. If you're a BYU fan, obviously you're going to be watching your own game, but if you win against San Francisco, then you could pass San Diego. So to break it down for you, St. Mary's would be rather significantly Gonzaga fans. San Diego fans. It would be an unlikely upset, but you're going to be watching your own game. You're going to watch this game. You're going to watch your own game because the San Diego upset, as unlikely as it may seem, would bump Gonzaga down to a tie for first place in the West Coast Conference if you are to win the game against Portland. If you're a BYU fan, you're probably going to be rooting for Gonzaga today. You're going to be watching the Gonzaga game because if you win that game, if Gonzaga wins that game and you win your own game against San Francisco, then you can move into third place in the West Coast Conference. Anyways, that's what happens tomorrow. I hope you guys are interested in it. Personally, I feel like I have to go with the obvious one here. Even the spreads aren't that large. Obviously, I feel like USC is going to dominate Arizona State. I just don't feel like there's any other possibility. Arizona State has not been playing exactly well recently. They pulled a close game against Arizona, but I just don't feel like that's them. I feel like that doesn't resemble them as well. Iowa had a mistakenly bad loss against Penn State. Obviously, Penn State's not a great basketball team. But Penn State did play their butts off to win that basketball game, and props to them. Iowa obviously had some injuries heading into that, they got in that game. So I don't put too much weight on that. Obviously, it's going to be a bad loss when it comes to being selected for the tournament, but this is a chance for a huge win for Iowa. I do think they have a really good basketball team. Again, they're averaging over 80 points a game, which is insane to think about. But that's what's going on in the Big Ten. I just feel like Ohio State is a really good basketball team this year. And then I just feel like you got to go with Arizona, right? Arizona is coming off not exactly their best week. They got owned by UCLA last week, early in the week, lost by 16 points. And then they eked by Arizona State the next weekend. And I just feel like this is a chance. This week's a chance for some statement wins if you're Arizona. And I feel like they're going to get them. I feel like at least they're going to get this one. We'll see against USC on Saturday. But I feel like you got to take Arizona in this matchup. It's going to be kind of a revenge matchup, and I'm really going to be looking forward to watching it. Everybody, it's GTV saying adios amigos and go Wildcats.